You're watching a Highwire Media podcast.
Welcome to the Big D Breakdown. As always, I'm your host, Larry Lace. This week, we'll dive on into all the latest Dallas Cowboy news. Before we do that, give us your thoughts in the comment section below on all the topics we covered. If there's something you want covered, let me know. With that, let's dive right in. So our first big story is the Cowboys offseason darling finally cracks the starting lineup. But there's a big caveat. Is it too good to be true? The Dallas Cowboys held their second of 3 mandatory minicamp practices on Wednesday. Because only limited contact is allowed, the offense has looked a step ahead of the defense. It puts defensive linemen, pass rushers, and cornerbacks in a tough spot. That has not stopped some players from wiggling their way into the spotlight, however. While Khair Elam continues to impress, none other than Keenan Hall practiced with the first-team defense on Wednesday. According to Joseph White of All City DLLS, Hall started in the nickel, while Elam and Daron Bland lined up on the outside. White noted that Hall, Bland, Elam trio was a new starting combination. The Cowboys have rotated several players in the slot position since the start of OTAs. That includes Bland, Hall, Thomas, Israel Makumo, though the bulk of Makumo's reps have come out wide. Former North Texas standout, Hall made waves during training camp last summer. That momentum continued into preseason when he recorded a 69-yard pick six against the Raiders. It ultimately wasn't enough to make the initial 53-man roster, but Hall appeared in 6 games during the regular season as a practice squad call-up. He played exclusively on special teams, much to the chagrin of Cowboy fans given the team was banged up in the secondary throughout the year. The current state of the secondary might explain why Hall has been a fixture with the starters since Dallas returned to practice. Trayvon Diggs and third-round pick Siobhan Rebel Jr. have worked off to the side as they continue to rehab from knee surgery. And second-year pro Kalen Carson only just returned to the fold following off-season shoulder surgery. At the same time, Diggs, Rebel, and Carson do not play the slot. Hall's skill set is best suited in the nickel. He has fluid hips and ideal speed to keep up with quicker receivers who thrive in the intermediate game. While Bland is most equipped to play the nickel of any quarterback on the roster, the injuries to Diggs and Ravel might force him to open the season on a boundary. That could open the door for Hall to start. Again, it is only minicamp. Hall could get overwhelmed by the spotlight, or the Cowboys could add a veteran who could start right away. However, defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus would not throw Hall out there with the ones if he didn't think he could do the job. Now on to our next topic. Joe Milton is already showing the Cowboys what they never got from Trey Lance. The Dallas Cowboys have a new look quarterback room this year after they traded for Patriots backup Joe Milton. A lot of fans expected the team to re-sign longtime number 2 quarterback Cooper Rush, but it's clear they wanted a different profile behind Dak Prescott. That cannot be said for Trey Lance, who seemingly sealed his fate after he tossed 5 interceptions in the final preseason game last year. It's unfortunate on many levels, but the Lance trade was the equivalent to Dallas setting a 4th-round pick on fire. The jury is still out on the Milton deal, but the second-year quarterback has impressed early on. So much that John Makota of The Atlantic notices a stark difference between the two signal callers, saying, quote, "Joe Milton to me has more confidence than I felt like I ever saw from Trey Lance. I'm not saying there's not things in Lance's game that weren't good and not a reason why you wouldn't have interest in him or anything like that. But Milton, when he's out there, he has a lot of confidence. He does not look like a guy that was a late-round pick. He looks like he was probably a day 2 pick. It's not a huge surprise that Lance lacked confidence. He was dealt an unfair hand in San Francisco, ultimately lost his starting job to Brock Purdy while he was injured. The former number 3 pick said all the right things with Dallas, but he failed to beat out Rush for the backup job. Not only does Milton have the edge on Lance in the confidence department, he has a much stronger arm and is a better athlete. That has been evident in both OTAs and mandatory minicamp. In Tuesday's practice, Milton finished a perfect 8 for 8 in team drills. Other reporters had Milton 10 for 10, but he was perfect nonetheless. His afternoon included a gorgeous deep ball to receiver Jalen Cropper. It is important to note that defensive backs can't be super physical in these practices, and that will change come training camp. But it speaks volumes that the Cowboys are only a handful of practices in the offseason program, and Milton is already turning heads. Milton is still incredibly raw. His accuracy comes and goes, and that can be attributed to his footwork, which can be stationary while he cans the field. scans the field, but it is easy to see why Dallas is bidding on his upside. Confidence is half the battle with professional athletes, and it appears Milton has more than enough of that to succeed. So now we're going to take a look at the biggest reason Cowboy fans should be optimistic about a 2025 playoff run. You don't have to squint much to see how the Dallas Cowboys get back to being a playoff contender. Just 12 months ago, the Cowboys were coming off their third straight 12-win season, and Dak Prescott finished second in MVP voting. While the lack of playoff success is notable, it's not hard to envision Dallas getting back to being a double-digit win team this season. But how did they get there? The Cowboys have lost a ton of talent in free agency over the last 3 offseasons. In the middle of the roster needs to be rebuilt, plus several key players on defense, Trayvon Diggs, DeMarvion Overshawn, Siobhan Ravel, are coming off major knee injuries that could cause them to miss several weeks of the regular season. The answer to all of their problems is their passing game. In a recent article from PFF, Dalton Wasserman gave one reason for every team to be optimistic about the upcoming season. For the Cowboys, that was none other than their elite passing offense, saying, quote, "Between Dak Prescott's return to full strength and George Pickens' arrival from Pittsburgh, Dallas should see improvement from last year's passing game performance. Assuming he is healthy, Prescott should be able to bounce back from a career-worst 67.2 PFF passing grade. Pickens tied for the NFL league with a perfect 99.9 deep PFF receiving grade and can be a perfect complement to CeeDee Lamb in the receiving corps. So, it all starts with Dak Prescott, who needs to stay healthy and prove that he can get back to his 2023 form. Before the hamstring injury, Prescott played some of the worst football of his career, as he was often trying to force too many throws and his decision-making was spotty. However, he still showed flashes of brilliance, such as his fourth quarter comeback win against Pittsburgh last year, where he threw the game-winning touchdown. The addition of Pickens should significantly impact the passing game, given the Cowboys a bona fide number 2 receiver who can make plays down the field. Pickens is only 24, and there is some belief that he hasn't even played his best football yet. Pairing him with CeeDee Lamb should give the Cowboys enough weapons in the passing game to get back to their elite status. But don't forget about a player like Jalen Tolbert, who was pushed in the number 2 role last year. While that was too big of a leap for him, he did play his best football of his career in 2024, and he's entering a contract year. Tolbert is overmatched as a number 2 receiver, but he could develop into a reliable number 3 option for Prescott going into his 4th year. And if Jake Ferguson can back to the level he saw him play during the 2023 season, this passing attack could be nearly unstoppable. The Cowboys finally have the right type of weapons around Prescott, and the hope is that the offensive line can gel quickly with several first and second year starters. If that is the case, there is no reason why this offense can't be among the best in the league. And that's what they'll need to do if they want to get back to being a perennial playoff contender. And now we're going to take a look at the actual infamous Steelers trade. One NFL analyst says the Cowboys fleeced the Steelers in the George Pickens trade. Credit where credit is due, and the front office crushed this trade. The Dallas Cowboys were much more aggressive this offseason when it came to trying to add talent. After a very disappointing 2024 offseason, the Cowboys made several trades, including adding a bona fide number 2 receiver to their offense. The acquisition of George Pickens was a surprising one, but it made sense considering the Cowboys did not select a single receiver during the 2025 draft. The expectation around the league circles was that Tetairoa McMillan, the star receiver from Arizona, would have been their preferred target at number 12, but he did not make it to that spot after the Panthers selected him at number 8. The Cowboys didn't love this receiver class, but it was apparent shortly after the draft that Dallas had a clear backup plan in place, and that plan was to acquire Pickens to pair with CeeDee Lamb for the upcoming season. Pickens is entering the final year of his contract, and the Cowboys have no plans to give him a new deal at this time. But that can work out for both parties, as Pickens will need to be on his best behavior to earn a new deal in Dallas. While the trade earned mixed reviews across the league, several outlets believe the Cowboys had stolen Pickens this offseason and that a future third-round pick was a bargain for a player of his talent. Gary Davenport, a national NFL writer for Bleacher Report, believes the acquisition of Pickens was one of the league's best offseason moves. Davenport wrote, quote, "The Dallas Cowboys head into every season with Texas-sized aspirations, but the team also had a 10-gallon hole at wide receiver opposite CeeDee Lamb. George Pickens had an up-and-down 3 years in Pittsburgh, but he but he never had less than 800 receiving yards in a season, and the potential to be an excellent number 2 receiver in Dallas. For a day 2 pick in 2026, plus a pick swap, Pickens is more than worth the risk. There is no doubt that the Cowboys had to address their wide receiver need this offseason, and once the draft was completed, Pickens was arguably the best option available. There are some serious flaws to his game, and the character concerns are documented. However, the Cowboys had no choice of being a playoff contender with their current receiving core, and that's why it could end up being a worthwhile risk for Dallas. Pickens has already been fitting in well with the Cowboys, and the fact that Prescott and Lamb have taken him under their wings is a good sign for his long-term outlook. We'll have to wait and see how the relationship works out, but this is a good risk for Dallas to take, with the downside being out only a 2026 third-round pick. The Cowboys are already being linked to a buzzworthy free agent that everyone is talking about. The Cowboys are already linked to the buzzworthy free agent everybody is talking about. The Dallas Cowboys remain on the lookout for secondary pieces who can help elevate this team from a wholly average roster to a unit that can cause some serious disruption in the NFC. The free agent market, however, isn't overflowing with many high-end options. While there could be some appeal in getting Stephon Gilmore back in town for one more run, the best player out there on the market is former Green Bay Packers cornerback Jair Alexander. The former Pro Bowler was recently released after a contentious final few seasons in Wisconsin. Bleacher Report has already started to chime in on the fun, linking the Cowboys to Alexander. The Dolphins, about to trade Jalen Ramsey, were also listed as a landing spot. Alexander may need to wait a bit before he finds an offer that is actually going to interest him, as the market for cornerbacks, with the concerning injury history he has, might be a major turnoff. Dallas, however, is not in a position to be overly cautious when it comes to making some signings that can maximize their contention window. Alexander, if the money is right, could be the type of aggressive man coverage cornerback that Dallas needs to beef up a unit that has collectively started to degrade in the last few years. If he's healthy, the Cowboys could land a major steal. Alexander's injury problems might be enough to talk most teams out of a deal, as he has played more than 7 games in a season in just one of the past 4 years. However, when he is healthy, it's impossible to deny that few can keep up with him in the solitary act of playing pure man coverage. Dallas chose not to upgrade the secondary in the first 2 rounds of the 2025 NFL Draft. Third rounder Shaban Revel Jr. has promised, but he will have to show that he can stay healthy after an injury robbed him of most of his final college season. If he isn't fully healthy, his secondary could be in for a brutal ride. Alexander is likely to prioritize either contending teams or teams that are desperate enough to give him a big contract despite his injuries. Dallas might be financially strapped at the moment, but they could show him enough of an appealing opportunity to win out over several inferior jobs. Alexander is like buying a Mega Millions ticket at this point in his career. He's rarely on the field enough to justify marquee status, but if his number comes up, it's not an exaggeration to say that he could be one of the best starting cornerbacks in the NFC once again. And now on to our next topic. Jerry Jones was just handed the perfect trade target after a minicamp no-show. The Cowboys are not done adding to a roster that is still 1 or 2 ticks below becoming a high-end contender, which means that Jerry Jones should be surveying the minicamp landscape and taking a look at anyone who decided to skip out in the name of a new deal. Miami Dolphins must deal with 2 big-name holdouts, including future Hall of Fame cornerback Jalen Ramsey, who decided to forego minicamp. Jonnu Smith wants a new contract, while Ramsey wants to play for seemingly any team that is not wearing aqua and orange. Ramsey, who missed the Pro Bowl for the first time since his rookie season way back in 2016, is still a quality starting cornerback who could help any team out there begging for more secondary talent. Unsurprisingly, Dallas could easily fit that bill after some offseason roster shaking. Cowboys have gotten away from their roots of pursuing big stars via trade for quite a while. Jones is clearly chomping at the bit to bring in a splashy name that can prevent them from falling too far behind the likes of Washington and Philadelphia in the NFC East. Ramsey has taken a bit of a step backward, but he's still one of the better cornerbacks in the AFC. His 76.9 PFF grade bears that out, as his grade ranked 16th among all cornerbacks in the league. Not bad for someone on the wrong side of 30, which is often death for quarterbacks. Ramsey has a ton of money owed to him in the next few years, which may not be ideal for a Cowboys team that is already weighed down by the Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb contracts, on top of the whole Micah Parsons situation. However, cornerback is a huge need, and no player, not even Stephon Gilmore, fits that need better than Ramsey. With multiple years left on his contract, Cowboys won't be able to get away with flicking a draft pick over to Miami and calling it a day. This will require some major investment, but Jones is not above making moves like this in the name of keeping the Cowboys in the national zeitgeist. If the Cowboys don't trade for Ramsey, some other contender will. This roster needs a system shock, and Ramsey can provide that. Before we go, we'd like to remind you that this episode was sponsored by Fanatics, your one-stop shop for officially licensed Dallas Cowboys sports gear. Whether you're repping the Cowboys, cheering on the Mavericks, or decked out for the Rangers, Fanatics has you covered with authentic jerseys, hats, tees, even that limited edition throwback you've been hunting. What I love is how easy it is. You browse by team or player, pick your size, and Fanatics handles the rest. Fast shipping, easy returns, and quality that holds up whether you're at the stadium or watching from home. Plus, right now you can score discounts when you visit using the link in the description. So if you want to show your true colors and support your squad in style, head on over and using the link in the description. And big thanks to Fanatics for sponsoring today's show. And with that, if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/the-big-D. As always, everything you give goes right back into the channel. And with that, thank you so much for watching and listening.